paranoid schizophrenic Edmund Kemper, at the age of 15, killed both his grandparents to see what it felt like. Upon release, he drifted, picking up and releasing female hitchhikers, but he soon stopped letting them go, killing 6 young women in the Santa Cruz, California area in the 1970s. Charles Manson was an American criminal who spearheaded a murderous campaign with his followers, the Manson family cult, that would make him one of the most infamous figures in criminal history. Notoriously connected to the brutal slayings of actress Sharon Tate and other Hollywood residents, Manson received the death penalty in 1971. Dennis Rader, the BTK murderer. Between 1974 and 1991, Dennis Rader murdered 10 people in Wichita, Kansas. He even sent letters to the police, taunting them under his alias name BTK, which stood for Bind, Torture, Kill. His technique was to stalk his victims before breaking into their homes, binding their limbs and finally strangling them. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. David Berkowitz is an American serial killer who murdered 6 people in New York City in 1976 to 77. He plunged the city into a panic and unleashed one of the largest manhunts in New York's history. Claiming he received his orders from a demon-possessed dog, he is one of the most notorious serial killers in America. Known as the son of Sam, Berkowitz was arrested on August 10, 1977, 11 days after his last murder, and was sentenced to 6 consecutive 25-year to life-term sentences. Aileen Wuornos, the monster. After a childhood of abuse and abandonment, Aileen Wuornos went on a killing rampage that made her America's most infamous female serial killer. In 2002, the state of Florida executed the 10th woman to receive the death penalty in the United States. Since the 1976 reinstatement of capital punishment, she was a former prostitute who had killed 7 men that she picked up while working the highways of the state in 1989 to 1990. John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. He was nicknamed Killer Clown because of his job attending children's birthday parties and charitable events as Pogo the Clown. Gacy was convicted of raping, torturing and murdering 33 teenage boys over a 6-year period. He would lure them to his home and kill them via either strangulation or asphyxiation, then bury them on his property. Gacy was executed in May 1994. Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. Richard the Iceman Kuklinski turned his uncanny lack of emotion and extreme violence into a lucrative career for prominent mafia crime families. He was convicted of only 2 murders but claimed to have killed over 100 people or more. Born in 1935 in New Jersey, Richard Kuklinski suffered from a rough upbringing and committed his first murder as a teenager. He eventually found a living as a hitman for the Genovese, Gambino and other crime families, becoming known as the Iceman for his method of freezing his victims to obscure the time of their deaths. Following his incarceration in 1988, Kuklinski freely shared his experiences with interviewers and was featured in multiple HBO documentaries. He died in prison in 2006 at the age of 70. Ted Bundy. You don't have to be an American or have been around in the 70s to know the name Ted Bundy. Bundy is easily one of the most deranged serial killers, not to mention kidnapper, rapist and burglar, as well as necrophilia to his sick repertoire of all time. His sick modus operandi included kidnapping his female victims, raping them and dismembering them. He often kept their heads as souvenirs. Before he was executed in 1989, Bundy admitted to kidnapping and murdering 30 women, though this number is almost certainly much higher. Jeffrey Dahmer, the cannibal. No list of the most deranged serial killers would be complete without Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was ultimately convicted of murdering 17 young men over a 14-year period. But Dahmer didn't just murder them, he also raped, dismembered and sometimes even ate his victims. During his trial, Dahmer admitted to drilling a hole into his victims' heads in an attempt to turn them into mindless sex slaves. Although Dahmer certainly would have been executed for his deranged crimes, he was was beaten to death in prison in 1994 by another inmate. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez was a serial rapist, killer and satanic worshipper who operated in the LA and San Francisco Bay Area from 1984 until his capture in August 1985. Dubbed the Night Stalker by the news media, Ramirez was one of the most vicious killers in the US history. By the age of 18, Richard was a habitual drug user and chronic candy eater, resulting in his tooth decay. He also became involved in Satan worshipping, and his general poor appearance enhanced his satanic persona. Ramirez went on a killing spree in the LA area that claimed the lives of at least 13 and as many as 16 in a spree that included shootings, mutilations and rapes. He was caught in East LA after his mugshot was broadcast around Southern California. He was accosted by a mob in the streets in the process of trying to steal a car. He was tried, convicted and eventually died at the age of 53, awaiting execution at San Quentin prison.